Kyle here with MaritimeGardening.com, and today I'm going to do a video showing you how to blanch and put down kale for the winter. If you're like me and you grow more kale than you could possibly eat, then you got to do something with all that surplus kale. You can go door to door and beg your neighbors to take it off your hands. You can feed it to your chickens or some other thing if you have chickens. I don't. You can throw it away. But what I would recommend is that you find some way to save it so that you can eat it later on when it's too cold to grow kale. I have found that if you grow, I have a family of 4, and if you grow 2 4 feet by 10 feet gardens of kale all summer long, that you can freeze enough kale to put enough aside to be eating kale deep into March. Maybe even beyond that, depending on how productive your garden is and how diligent you are in storing it. So I'm going to show you how I do that right here. So I got a fantastic bounty of kale, and I got some lacinato kale, the black magic variety from Vessi Seeds, and I've got some white Russian kale as well. I'm going to eat this because this is just delicious kale. But this here is surplus to my needs. I'm basically pulling this much kale out of my garden every day. We don't eat this much kale every day. We don't eat kale every single day. So I got to do something with it. So I'm going to show you how I preserve it. It's ridiculously easy. The first thing you got to do is get a saucepan like this. This is a 12-inch, I guess, aluminum alloy saucepan, and put it on about 7, the 7 setting on your oven. All right, so you've got the pan heating up. You want it nice and hot, and what you also want to do is put half a cup of water in there. Okay, so just get a half cup measure and water and put it in the pan. There's different approaches to blanching vegetables, and my general approach is to steam it. That is to say, the classic approach to blanching is to have a bath of water and to immerse the veg in the bath of water and then to take it back out. But then a lot of nutrients are lost in that water. Unless you use it in some way, you're just throwing it all down the sink. So my mentality is to use enough water that there's enough heat and steam to wilt down whatever vegetable it is you're trying to blanch, and produce enough heat to wilt it down, to compact it, right? And then all that water goes in the container where you're going to freeze that vegetable, so that you don't lose anything. It's all there. And I find with this is a fairly large bowl. This is like a large salad bowl. I guess this is about 12 inches by 5 or 6 inches, right? It's basically a full-sized salad bowl, right? This is full of kale, and if you have this much kale, you can turn it down into about a 1 pound or slightly less than 1 pound brick of kale with just a little bit of heat and water and salt in a saucepan. So the next step is to take that kale, these are in full-size pieces, and chop it up a little bit. That'll just help it fit into the pan a little bit better. And of course, when you want to cook it later on in the season, it's kind of ready to go. It's there's not a lot of work involved. So you just have your, I don't know, I like to use an 8-inch chef's knife. And you're chopping this in, I don't know, 1/2-inch sections, I guess. I'm just going to put this on the counter here. My counter is nice and everything's clean here. Everything's nice and clean. Just going to dump this water. Put all this processed stuff back in the bowl. Clean the counter later. So just grab hunks that you can, manage in your hand, the size that your hand is. You're doing all this while the fry pan's heating up, so you're not wasting any time. Basically, by the time I've got this all processed, the pan will be ready. So, this whole operation, start to finish, takes about 10 minutes. So it's really not that big a deal. It's not a massive operation. It's the sort of thing you can do every other day, all summer long. I mean, it's August 1st today. You just stay on top of it like that. And, my kale plants could produce kale well, I mean, I'm in zone 6A. My kale plants produce kale well into November, December. And because I've got 2 beds of it, it's always producing more than I can possibly eat. So I'm putting it aside all summer long, and it's one of those plants that loves to be picked and loves to be pruned. I'm constantly picking leaves and selecting, picking leaves in such a way that opens up the space to other plants and lets the light in. The more you pick the leaves, the more kale you get. Right, so here, got that all nicely processed now. So now we're going to go to the pan. It should be hot enough. I can see steam coming off of it right now, so let's go over to the pan. Okay, so here we are with a nice hot pan, and there's a good amount of steam coming off, and I got all my nice kale. So this isn't at a rolling boil, but it's pretty darn close. I'm just going to turn it up a little higher to kickstart things, but that's close enough, right? You just want it boiling. This is basically boiling. There's a good boil. Okay, the boil's happening. As long as you can see the boil happening, I got a boil going on here. That's good enough. Now we put all our greens in. This is about, making a bit of a mess here, but it'll all wilt down for a pan this size. All right, there we go. Just gonna put the stuff in here. Only take a few minutes to wilt this down. And sure, it would take less time if we had a boiling pot of water, but then we'd lose a lot. Alright, so we got everything in there. I'm just going to put a couple dashes of salt on this. Salt's just a great thing for maintaining flavor and preserving and so on and so forth. And, if you don't like salt or you're not allowed to eat it, don't use it, but I do, so I'm using it, and it makes everything awesome. And that was probably maybe in volume-wise, that was probably half a teaspoon of salt. Okay, so now we got a good heat going on here. I'm going to put this lid that doesn't quite fit on top and push it down. I'm going to set the timer for about 2 minutes. Alright, so it's been 2 minutes and the alarm's about to go off. Now I'm just going to move this around a bit, but it's remember how this wouldn't even fit in the pan. Now it's dramatically welted down. That's basically enough. That's done. You don't need to do that anymore. It's welted down enough and it's going to fit the way we want it to fit. So let's move over to the container now. Alright, so we've got our kale, and it's been blanched, steamed, however you want to define that. I'm sure there's people that have lots of different approaches, but this is the way I do it, and it's dead easy, and it takes minutes. So it's been wilted down considerably. Remember, I could barely get this into this saucepan when we started, and now it's basically lost all its spring. And now you just need a plastic container like this. And you just want to put all that stuff in the container. I put everything in the container, the water, everything that came out of the kale goes in here. Right, because that's all, Everything that's good about the kale is in this pan. I guess some of it went into the atmosphere, I suppose. But anyway. And yes, some nutrients break down with heat and blah blah blah, I agree. But I would argue that your own kale preserved this way is better for you than the rubbish you could buy at the grocery store. The so-called fresh kale at the grocery store. I would argue that in February or March or April, you don't have anything in your garden because you live in a place that's freezing cold. The stuff you've frozen like this has got more in it. It's better for you. It's more nutrient dense than what you buy in the grocery store. Unless you're buying extremely high-end organic produce. But considering, if you have land and you grew this in your backyard and you grew it for next to nothing for 2 pennies a seed, this is the best deal in town. So, you get it in the container and you just sort of smush it down a little bit. Try to compact it as much as you can. Because what you're going to do is you're going to take this and put it in your freezer. And once you've got it nice and compacted down, there's things you can do to make it even more compact. But this is about this container is about half. This is I think a 1 quart container. It's about 2/3 to 1/2 full, right? And there's a good weight there. This is enough kale to make a good vegetable side dish with a meal for a family of 4. That's my reference, right? I got a family of 4. If you had company, you probably want to do 2 of these. But it's going to freeze like this and it's going to become a brick. And then you can pop it out of this container and put it in a bag and just do that over and over and over again. You'll have bags and bags and bags of frozen kale. I mean, yeah, you can dry it and there's all kale chips and all that sort of stuff. But volume-wise, if you want to put down a ridiculous amount of kale, if you really want to make the most of your space, your garden space, in my opinion, this is the way to do it, right? There's some weight to this, right? This is a good amount of kale, and it's really easy to do. This is the way to do it. One other thing you can do, if you want to get this as compact as you can, you put another container on top and put some rocks in that container. Add some weight. And you can put water in there too. Then put it in the freezer like that, just to get the brick as small and as compact. The less air that's in that brick, the less prone it is going to be to getting freezer burnt and that sort of stuff. I mean, you're going to be keeping it for less than a year anyway, so you're not at a lot of risk. But if you're concerned about that, the more compressed, the more weight you can put on top of it, the more compressed you can get it, the longer it's going to keep. Alright, so that's how I blanch and freeze and preserve my kale. Over the years I've found that's the easiest and most effective way to do it in terms of the use of the time and how much kale you can put aside. So I hope you found that useful, and possibly you can incorporate that into how you organize your time in your garden. And if that's the case, please subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden and in your kitchen. Thanks for watching.